I want to talk a little bit about myself and what my credentials are to discuss this subject. I'm a newspaper humor columnist, which means basically what I do for a living is I sit around in my underwear and make things up. It's a lot like being a consultant. Of course, a consultant would be wearing your underwear. But I used to be a real journalist. I used to do what real journalists do. I used to go out, interview people, take notes, come back, and then make things up. And I thought, why not just cut out the middleman? And that's really what I do now. And it's probably a good thing. I was not a really good reporter. The key to being a good reporter is not so much writing ability, it's ability to talk to people. To keep your wits about you, to not get flustered, to not blither, to be able to ask penetrating questions even when you're facing an intimidating person. I was bad at all of that. I have a tendency to blither and freeze up and lock up whenever I was confronted with somebody intimidating. I can give you a true example of that. This happened after I became a columnist, but I was briefly put in a situation that reminded me of how bad I was at being a reporter. In 1992, I was in New Hampshire. I was writing columns about the New Hampshire presidential primary. And I decided to spend a day following then First Lady Barbara Bush around. Not as a stalker, but as a member of the press corps with Mrs. Bush. And it was a real press corps. Big-time reporters, big-time papers, New York Times, Washington Post, and so on, and Mrs. Bush's entourage and her Secret Service agents. Quite an imposing Washington group of people. And then I was kind of lurking in the background, which is what I do, just taking notes, not saying anything. It comes the end of the day. Mrs. Bush has a little press conference, which I didn't say anything in. And then, when I thought we were going to leave, a photographer, the White House photographer, said he wanted a picture of the press corps with Mrs. Bush. And he put us in a semicircle and put me kind of right in the middle and brought Mrs. Bush over, and he put her right next to me. So I've gone from being kind of lurking in the outside, which is what I like to do, to being in the middle of this very high-powered Washington group, right next to the First Lady of the United States. That's a situation where I know better than to talk. I know it's a smile, you're happy to be there, but don't say anything, just make a fool of yourself. That's what I decided in my mind. But you know how your brain does not always alert your entire body as to the plan? And we're standing there, and suddenly I hear myself talking to Barbara Bush. Out of my mouth comes loud, perky words, very unnaturally perky tone of voice for me, like, who's doing this? Who is talking to me? And I say to Barbara Bush, the First Lady of the United States, in front of all these people, I shop at the same supermarket as your son, Jeff. That's what I told Barbara Bush. And it was true. At the time, Jeb Bush, who was not the governor then, and I shopped at the same public supermarket on South Dixie Highway. But I don't think she was dying to know that. I don't think she was standing there going, I wonder if he shops at the same, but I informed her and everybody else of that fascinating fact, and Mrs. Bush goes, well, who gives a shit? Not with her mouth, but with her eyes. She made that point very clear. With her mouth, she said, oh, we just celebrated Jeb's 39th birthday. Now, if you analyze these two statements, I shop at the same supermarket as your son Jeb. Oh, we just celebrated Jeb's 39th birthday. They have very little to do with each other except the word Jeb. She was being gracious. Mrs. Bush is a wonderful lady, and she recognized immediately what she was dealing with, a blithering idiot. I'm sure she sees it all the time, and she just was putting me at ease by making it sound like we were having a conversation. Instead of ridiculing this incredibly inane remark that I had blurted out, she was making it okay. And I'm thinking with my brain, thank you, Mrs. Bush, thank you. Like, why in the world did I say that? Where did that even come from? Thank you for not making it. That's what I'm thinking with my brain. But then I look down and I see to my horror that my mouth is thinking, whoa, we are really hitting it off here. And I hear myself saying to Barbara Bush, following up on the fascinating fact, that I shop at the same supermarket as her son Jeb, I say in a very loud, perky voice, "He's very tall." That's what I told the First Lady, and it's true. Jeb Bush is tall, but I'm sure she was already aware of that. And she says, I'm sure at this point she's looking around for somebody with a tranquilizer dart. But she says, "Well, he didn't just grow this year." And then, thank God, the photographer took the picture, and all I had to do was endure the ridicule of my fellow journalists on the long bus ride back to the hotel, marveling at my interviewing technique, speculating on what I would have asked Lee Harvey Oswald if I'd had the chance. And you know how they say there's this phenomenon called spontaneous human combustion, where people just burst into flames and scientists can't explain why. I can explain why. Sometimes that is your best option. So that's really why I'm a humor. I was just a bad reporter. That was it. I'm an embarrassing person, and I always have. And I'm sure you know people like this who just are embarrassing. They embarrass themselves and they embarrass others around them. That has always been me all my life.